I'm in a 10-year game plan right now. We obviously live in a short attention span world. Everyone's focused on borrowing tomorrow's happiness. That's where I just truly double down on self-awareness. How self-aware are you in the type of life that you want to live, the type of relationships that you want to have, the type of community that you want to build? That's what truly transformed and what expedited me making certain connections with certain people, having certain opportunities. It was like I had a specific vision on what I wanted, and then I just worked backwards.
Welcome back to another episode of A Dialogue with Dylan. This is number 17, and joining me today is my friend Brian Cruz, who is involved in several endeavors within entrepreneurship and video, among other things. So I'm very excited to have him on today to just get some insights into what he's been up to. So Brian, thanks for joining and looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise, Dylan. Thank you for having me.
So we got connected when I was hired as a second camera at a wedding, and you were the lead. And if anyone listened to the last episode with Reggie, he was involved as a production assistant. And I actually didn't know that the two of you were childhood friends, which is pretty cool. But I suppose a good starting point would be, can you give me a backstory into what got you into video and photo to begin with, leading up to that wedding that we both got connected at?
Sure. So when we first met, I had been doing weddings for about a year or so full time. So the backstory prior to that, I had entered the wedding industry as more of I had already been doing freelance, little small gigs here and there, got into photo and video due to my past work experience, which was just a part-time job at Best Buy, picked up the skills of learning how to use a camera. And then that slowly led to me wanting to make money with the skill, which then led to weddings. Yeah, that's basically to answer your question before we dive, I guess, too deep into the story.
What was it about the creativity side of cameras, when you were working with them at Best Buy? Was there something that inspired you or piqued your curiosity beyond just the technical aspect of the camera? And was there a moment where you realized that you could turn this curiosity into a business and make a living from it?
Yeah. At the time, when I was working at Best Buy, I had been on track to go into IT, signed up for the 4-year, I was in high school. I hated school at the time, but I was like, college is going to be it for me. And when I then attended college and started to get hit with the real world of all right, you're getting into the field at which you quote unquote dreamt of, or at least the dream was instilled into you that this is the way to go. You started to realize oh wait, there's this, people get paid by pointing a camera at something and creating something themselves, and people pay a bunch of money for it. It's that whole concept was new to me. So you're telling me I don't have to go to a school for 4 years and, get into debt and then get a job. And so that, I wouldn't say it was the creativity that stood out to me as much, but it was the path that I was currently on and the path that was paved through the creative work. I was intrigued by it. And so that's what led me down okay, let's give this a shot. What do we have to lose? We're already going according to the plan, but let's do a side mission while we're on the main mission. And that side mission ended up turning into basically the main mission. So it was more of realizing that the creative path was not the traditional path. And I liked the idea of doing something that was sort of more unknown than something that I signed up for, and I didn't necessarily like the outcome that I signed up for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the film business can be really versatile in the sense that if you want to pursue it full-time, eventually you can always do it on the side and figure out what you like doing and then build up your portfolio and start doing cold outreach and networking, and you can really build something around that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a light switch. And I don't think it really is for any people. It's this constant process of seeing what you enjoy and trying out a bunch of things, and then that sort of sculpts the career that you end up on. So can you talk about just the networking aspect of, especially when you were just starting? Because I think that's so crucial if you want to pursue a career in any creative business full time, because there's college and you can network there, but what were some ways that you got your foot in the door, and what would your advice be to people who are looking to improve their networking skills or are nervous about reaching out to people, or just what has that done for you, and what's your whole assessment of the role that networking plays?
Yeah. So this is definitely going to be probably one of my longest answers to your question, just because there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
First thing is going to be addressing the ego. And it's funny, you talk about starting out, like you have an ego when you start out. You have an ego that you're pretty good with the camera, but you don't feel confident enough to charge money for it. That's an ego. Like any association that you have with a specific outcome, like that, you're tying a form of ego to it. And so, when I started out, I thought just because I knew how to use a camera, I was either in one of two camps. And like you're either in one of two camps. I could tell you which one I was in. But you're in the camp of, okay, I learned a skill set, so I can start making good money, right? The reality is you're just not, because what's stopping you from all these other people that watch YouTube and learn how to use a camera? Like they're all qualified if that's the measurement of qualification. The reality is you don't know shit. And then you're in the other camp where you feel like you're not good enough. You're never learn. There's still much more. You're still the student. You don't feel confident enough, or you can't charge because you're not there yet. So you continuously learn, and regardless of what camp you're in, egos are associated with it. So the biggest thing I like to do is, where can I over deliver? Where's the opportunity where I can over deliver? And I like to be in the camp of, I don't know anything. Even though I might know a lot, I still don't know anything. And there's a beautiful factor to that. So, when you're trying to network, and even to this day, with the portfolio that I have, with the network that I have, I always go into a new conversation. How can I give value first? And all this is like a very big thing in the creative field, like give value first. Well, what does that actually mean? The biggest gap that I've noticed, at least if you're trying to, this is very specific, if you're trying to network in the, like someone like myself, I'll tell you what someone like myself values. I value someone that comes to me and says, hey, I love the recent project that you did. They appreciate, they recognize the work, but then they also have a way, hey, I would love to make this just a bit more better for you. I don't want any recognition. I don't want any credit. I want to help you first. Everyone's always in the, how can I can't tell you how many emails I get saying, hey, are you hiring? Hey, are you open to working with me, or do you have any gigs? It's like, great. That's what I can do for you. I've built my team out. I've vetted the people. I've, gone through that process, but it's like, why would I want to give away that work when I can give it to the people that have given me value first? So there's a level of, like, be the student. For an analogy, you want to think about the student and the professor. You want to make sure that as the student coming into the game, how can you provide value to the professor? You might think, oh, well, professor, help me with my notes, help me with, my problems. But what you can genuinely help the professor with is, maybe you organize their papers, or again, that's probably not the best analogy dropping out of college, but, like, you want to see what the professor or the person that you're asking for help, what they value, not what you value, not what you get out of it. And so I'll give you a applicable example is, I've been blessed to have the circle that I have, and it wasn't overnight. It was giving value first. And the biggest thing, shout out to my boy Jesse, when I first started, or when I was growing in the wedding industry, I had looked to take on more second shooting gigs. And so he had reached out to me, or we were using Honeybook Community at the time. And I saw he put a job listing, and I was like, oh, great, like perfect opportunity. I emailed him my work. At this point, I did have work. So I understand, just to address the elephant in the room, I am asking for his business. I'm looking to help him, but I'm still asking for his business. He marketed it. He built the brand. I'm coming in and just, hey, can I get a piece of that pie that you baked that or that you put together? Like, I know I'm going into that asking for that. So he reached out to me, just asking for more information. So I realized at this point, okay, I'm sort of in. He's asking my background. He's asking what cameras do I shoot? Great. Let's do this. So I would say lucky enough to shoot with him, but I made sure when I was on that shoot, I wanted to be the best second shooter he had ever worked with. So I was make sure, hey man, like, can I get you something to drink? Like, we had a little break. Hey, like, let me get you some water. What do you like? A Coke? Okay, let me get you some Coke. I was not just there to film and shoot. I wanted to be a pleasure to work with. And I wanted to be the reason why he hits me back up and hires me for a second shoot. So that's like when you have your foot in the door and how you can over deliver, I guess, applicable. But someone like myself, who's in the process of scaling right now, the biggest thing we struggled with was behind the scenes. We're so focused on our product, on the experience for our client. The best help you can do for a production company, at least like mine, is come in and say, hey, can I do behind the scenes for you? Can I like film this? Can I put together this thing? You know, most of the requests I get, like inquiries, is, hey, are you hiring? Or can you add me to your roster? Again, a lot of things I can do for people. But it's like, again, I'm giving you a piece of the pie that I baked or my team baked. So why would I give it to anyone else but the people that have given me value first? I'm a big believer in the law of reciprocity. If you're familiar with it, it just states like what you put out is basically what you get back in. And if you are spiritual, you know, it comes back tenfold from the universe. So just naturally, like, how can you serve? How can you give value? And you'd be surprised how quickly you can grow, whether it's within a specific niche, in a company, in a circle. But that's like my key advice to like networking is be a valuable asset. Don't be an expense.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I tell people this all the time, that quality is just an expectation, and it's not that difficult to find people that will produce high quality videos. You need to find other ways to stand out. And for me, I'm a big believer in providing value up front too, not just in people who can hire me for their productions, but in the context of clients as well. You know, what ways besides just the quality are you differentiating yourself? Is it the quick turnaround times, or the really responsive, punctual communication? Is it going above and beyond? And if they ask for an extra edit, you know, you do it for them and you don't necessarily upcharge them, and you just include it in the bundle that you have. Obviously, this is case by case, and you know, you don't want to go too overboard. And there's a fine line between over delivering and being taken advantage of, I think.
Sure.
But I think when you're starting out and you're trying to build your reputation, I don't think that you should be that strict with, you know, those boundaries. People are very opinionated on this when it comes to doing free work, but I think it's such a very effective strategy to build up that network when you don't have it. And then, I mean, the most valuable thing that you can have in this business is a strong, fruitful network where you can extract work from and referrals. And it's a long-term investment and a process that you invest in over time, but then it pays you dividends later. And that it's not necessarily a tangible thing that you see in the moment, where, like you said, if you're trying to prove that you're the most valuable second shooter that this person's going to have, you may be going above and beyond, and that benefit that you're getting, you might not get in the form of like instant gratification. It might be that they remember you later down the road and they hire you again, and it's not necessarily an instant thing. So that's something that has really gone a long way for me, and it sounds like for you as well. So that's I think that's very well said. But
Just want to follow up on something that you said. A lot of the things that you like, the practical applications, they're all in the micro. The reason why it's not popular to do free work is because on a micro level, when you're really analyzing, it's like, well, I'm not making any money. What am I getting like instantly, like that instant gratification that you talked about?
yes,
And this ties back to what I mentioned before, is self-awareness. Like, I'm in a 10-year game plan right now. when I first started, I was in a 5-year game plan. I'm not in a how is my year going to look at the end of the year or even like by the end of the month. I think that's the biggest disconnect. A lot of people are just so, and we obviously live in a short attention span world. Everyone's focused on borrowing tomorrow's happiness. So it really, that's where I like just truly double down on like self-awareness. How self-aware are you in the type of life that you want to live, the type of relationships that you want to have, the type of community that you want to build? And the sooner you can be fully self-aware on that, and I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying it takes time. And if you decide today, all right, I'm going to start working on maybe putting pen to paper, describing what that looks like, that's the first step. But I think that's what truly transformed and what expedited me making certain connections with certain people, having certain opportunities. It was like I had a specific vision on what I wanted, and then I just worked backwards. Okay, so if I want this type of life, well then how does this person operate on a day-to-day? Okay, do I operate like that currently? No. Okay, so let me start to like get my fitness right. I'm in the health and wellness space. I want to be the top health and wellness creative agency in the market. So for me, I got to lead by example. I got to be a pretty fit guy. At the time when I first started, I wasn't the most fit. So it's like I want to truly embody what that culture, what that message, what that image looks like. And so as a creative, right, just to speak the creative language, it's like we think of what the final product looks like. We love expressing that creativity, but like it all starts with an idea. So plant the seed of the idea of the type of life you want, the self-awareness you'll need, and then work backwards. Put together the pre-production guide, put together the post-production plan, whatever it is, but work backwards. People are so focused on where they're currently at and try to figure out what the next step is. I'm in the, hey, let me talk to the guy, or let me put myself mentally in the framework of I've already made it. Now let me walk backwards instead of walking forward.
Yeah, that's such a great way of thinking about it. What you said reminded me of a philosophy that I have been trying to implement in my own business strategy, which is practicing what you preach. And I think that subconsciously says a lot about you and your offer. And I'll give you an example. Primarily, the service that I've been offering is podcast production. And I thought that it was a little odd that my offer is telling people the value of having a consistent podcast for a brand, but I have a personal brand and I don't have a podcast. So, or I did, but it wasn't really up and functioning. So I thought that is very important if I am making those claims, or that is a part of my offer and my messaging, that is something that I need to be actively doing myself, which is, it's one of the reasons why I'm doing my podcast. Again, it's not the only reason. I enjoy the network and the conversations and the creative aspect of it. There are a lot of other reasons, but I think that's one example. And it's like you said, if your target market is health and wellness professionals, then obviously you should be prioritizing your own health and wellness. So there's these parallels that you can draw, and it may seem very simple, but it's like you said, you need to embody those values and you need to live by example. And that says so much without saying anything, because if you're preaching a certain content strategy and you're doing it yourself, or if you have certain methods of generating leads and you use those to generate leads for yourself and you want to offer that as a service to other people, then you don't necessarily have to remember a whole marketing pitch every time you talk to someone. If people just see what you're doing and it's working for you, then that will attract the right people who want the same results. So I don't know if you have anything to add there, but that's a philosophy that I've been really trying to focus on in my own work.
Yeah, no, and it sounds really simple, right? Especially because we're doing it now. And I was in the same boat, preaching or selling content creation when I didn't even show my face to camera or create any content for my own brand, my own personal brand, things like that. So it's definitely important. But I think the one thing people don't talk about, or, you hear a lot about imposter syndrome and, I was in the camp of, I felt like my product was just never good enough. I was analysis by paralysis. Oh, I can't start doing that until this thing happens, and I can't start doing that, and so on and so forth. And what truly changed was like, I just worked on myself. I stopped working on the business. I stopped working on the strategies. I stopped working on all those things because at the end of the day, all those are valid excuses, keyword excuses, on why you're not doing what you need to be doing, creating content, putting yourself online, being vulnerable, things like that. But what it truly was for me, like, I don't think we touched on this, but I just moved to Austin, Texas. I grew up New Jersey, New York area my entire life. I associated a certain identity before, back then, when I was living there. I was thinking of the kid that, didn't get the girl or got bullied and all these things that, like, this identity, I carried that even though I'm not that person anymore. It just stayed with me. And so for me, the biggest thing, weight off my shoulders, was like, I gotta like reinvent myself. I have to put myself in a different community, a different environment. And so I went searching for that. I'm part of a community where I attended a mastermind in Mexico, and I've had some pretty wild experiences. But that truly like connected me with the right people and made me realize, like, okay, these are my people. Not the people back at home that I'm so worried about what they're going to think about, or when I start putting that video out, they're going to say this and all that stuff. And it's like, again, that was still a year ago. Like that's not like I all of a sudden things changed. It was like, it took me moving to fully have confidence in, like, all right, now we're doing this. We're going full force. We burned the boats. There is no boat that's taking us back. So it's like, it's a beautiful thing, but it's also, some people get scared because it's like, well, this is new territory. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know, uncertainty. For me, it's just understanding my risk tolerance. I just know I can take on a lot more risk and be okay with like things not working. I'll be like, all right, I'll just go back home. Yeah, my ego might be hit, but at the end of the day, ego is always going to be the enemy. So it's always going to be there. Might as well take all the upside of like taking the risk and then potentially making it, or, achieving what I set out for. So I think, just to wrap up on this point, is take the time to truly be self-aware. If they're like, you know what you need to be doing. You know the things you need to be working on. You just decided to make the productive excuses on why you can't touch on that. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. It's going to be hard. But the sooner you can address those things, you'll be surprised how much more clarity you have on the next step that you have to take. I understood my risk tolerance. Some people don't know their own risk tolerance. And that's where self-awareness comes in. So the more time you can spend becoming more self-aware, the more you can figure out, okay, these are the types of leaps I can take. Can I take leaps or can I take steps? What type of person am I? Because you might be hearing this and this might resonate for some of your viewers, but then for other viewers, they're like, this guy's crazy. This guy's on drugs. Like, this guy, I would not listen to a word he says. That's fine. But be self-aware of that. Understand what camp you're in, what type of risk tolerance you have. So the better you can understand yourself, the better you can understand the exact steps you need to be taking. You know the steps. There's a bunch of podcasts, there's a bunch of information. We're overloaded with information, but deep down in your soul, when you go do that internal work, you'll know the exact step to get to where you want. I like to use the analogy of fitness all the time, just because I just so happen to be in the industry. But like, people are like, oh, I don't know where to start. Like, I don't know where to start to lose weight. Okay. If you had to guess, just guess, what are the two things you maybe have to do? Okay, maybe it's working out and then eating. Okay, so you already found two lanes that you need to figure out. Okay, what am I currently doing? Because what I'm currently doing is obviously not working, because I obviously want to change. So maybe I have to change something with my food that I'm eating. And the same thing with, fitness. Well, there's either the people that don't do they do absolutely zero fitness. Maybe I should start doing fitness. Like, the answers are there. You can get, analysis by paralysis by going to how much workouts, what's my recovery, how's my sleep, like all these little things, but it's all about starting. And people just don't even start because they say they don't know what to do. But it's like, you just decide to ignore the first step.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think you will always find a way to talk yourself out of doing something that is worth pursuing. And to give the analogy of creating content, if you're going to put yourself out there, when you first start, the way that you appear on camera and your on-camera presence is probably not going to be great. And
Mhm.
if you wait until you're totally satisfied with how you are on camera or how the editing is or the amount of views you're getting, then you're never going to start. And or if people are afraid about the feedback or the opinions of others, that really was a big fear of mine. When I was going to start posting more content and creating my own personal brand. There are a lot of people that follow me just as like an acquaintance and they don't necessarily want to see my like quote unquote business side of things.
Mhm.
But I've realized that if you don't want to see that, then you don't have to. And
Sure.
this is just what I'm going to choose to pursue. And because I think that it's something that's worthwhile doing. And the more reps that I put in to the content that I'm doing, I'm only going to get better. And you have to view the whole thing as a process and a journey because if you just set up your camera and record something for the first time and it's perfect, then what road are you on to it? Like, what's the destination that you're supposed to be achieving? Like, you're supposed to be constantly getting better. And that whole mentality of like never being satisfied and constantly working on yourself, I think is really crucial. And another thing that I was reminded of when you were saying that is I don't know if it might be imposter syndrome is, the right term for it, but I often feel even though, I've been doing video for a lot of years,
Mhm.
there are still times where I feel like I'm not qualified to be submitting that proposal for that particular rate or working with these people. Just having the trust being put in me that some clients give me. I often compare myself to other creators on social media who they may seem more accomplished, but the one way that I like to frame these things is that everyone is figuring it out for themselves in some way. Yeah, people may be more experienced or further down the road than other people, but if you want to be successful in entrepreneurship or having your own business or doing a personal brand, you have to have this enormous level of confidence in yourself regardless of, because we all have those insecurities or that feeling like we're not worthy of the work that we're doing or the rates that we're charging, but you really have to push beyond that. And I don't know if delusional is the right word, but you have
No,
to
no. Yeah.
you have
I
to
think
have this delusional level of confidence in yourself that
I
despite
think
the insecurities.
the key word is faith. I think confidence is something that you prove to yourself over time. Alex Hormozy talks about being a stack of undeniable proof. Be a stack of undeniable proof so that way when you look in the mirror, you say the guy that you are that guy because of the stack of undeniable proof that you've done, right? I
Mhm.
think it all starts with faith. Like having the faith in yourself that you have the potential to then unlock or you're capable of being, let's say, a confident individual. As soon as you unlock that or swallow that pill of saying, you know what, moving forward today, I am a confident person and that's who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Okay, so now that I've accepted that, what does a confident person do? Does a confident person, shake or waver when a question is asked or they're asked about pricing? Like, listen, I'm talking to you're talking to someone who is in the exact same camp of like, oh my God, sending a $10,000 proposal, that's a lot. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, am I really worth that? I look back on that individual and what identities, what values, what principles did I have at that time? I didn't have the stack of undeniable proof. I wasn't in good shape. I wasn't eating the right type of food. And that's just what's helped me become this version of myself. It's like, well, I feel really good when I look in the mirror. I feel really good when people compliment, a piece of clothing that I'm wearing. It's like, cause I took time to like craft that or like did research on like styling myself, like becoming the better version. I didn't know how to dress before. I honestly, like, I'm not saying I'm the best dressed, but it's like now I at least dress to the new identity. And so truly embodying that. And when you talk about delusion, yes, in a way you have to be a little delusional, but at the end of the day, like you just have to surround yourself in the right environment. I look back to when I used to like be afraid to charge more than 5 figures for a project is because a lot of the people around me weren't used to that type of money. When you get around the people that are making more than 6 figures a month, it's like, dude, $10,000 a month is not like, that's crumbs. And when you are around that and that's their bare minimum, that's like crumbs to them. You start to raise your performance level, your hygiene, your lowest standard now becomes that 10,000 or that 20,000, whatever it is, right? And it's again, it's not an overnight process, but that's where I go back to the self-awareness. Who's in your ear? What content are you listening to? Who are you communicating with on a daily basis? Are they contributing to you? Your hygiene standard being 6 figures a month is nothing, or is it like, hey man, that's a lot. That's like what someone makes in a month. I mean, in a year, like that's a lot of money. You know, there's two different voices. I want to be around the voice, or you know, that are like, hey man, like that. I told someone, I was like, yeah, man, I just broke 6 figures last year. This year I'm trying to do more, double that. And he's like, dude, you can do that in a month. Like if you just did these things, like you could easily do that in a month. And like, to me, when he said that, I'm like, damn, like I didn't, you know, I don't believe that. I truly don't. But the fact that he's doing it, and then I have the conviction of like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. I just haven't figured out how. Why not? And then slowly you start to unlock the keys that give you the clarity, that give you all these different things. So, you know, to address the, you know, delusion or, you know, being confident, it's like, it all starts with faith. Do you have faith in yourself? Do you have faith in a higher being? Like this past 2 years have been the most I've grown spiritually. I became a Christian last year. Like that changed the trajectory of how I move forward, because I stopped looking at myself. I stopped looking what I can get. I stopped looking at the life that I could live. I started looking at how can I fully embody, like, you want to be a servant, you want to be service to others, to society, to the world, to God. What does that look like? And I try to embody those principles and learn about them. So you operate differently in that framework.
Yeah, I love that. And it all comes back to you and working on yourself. And if you're going to be communicating with people, whether it's clients or colleagues, if you don't have that conviction and believe in yourself, then how are you going to sell, you know, what you have to bring to the table to other people if you can't sell it to yourself? There are so many other things that influence, I think, business or career success aside from just knowing how to use a camera, for example, or how to maintain good clients. You know, you're talking about fitness and spirituality, being grounded, striving to constantly pursue truth and acquire knowledge and surround yourself with people who are influencing you the right way. Do you think that those things are just the foundation of everything that determines your, or I guess what your ceiling is in like an entrepreneurship journey? Because I think people's obsessions, and I'm not saying it's not important, but their obsessions may be on just the technical stuff or like the nuts and bolts of what it's like to, you know, like put together a funnel or have like good editing techniques or how to have perfect lighting. But all of these things, if they're not implemented in the right way and they're not an extension of this greater purpose, it's very shallow and surface level, and it doesn't, I suppose it's not as fulfilling. So can you talk about, just dive into that a little bit more about, you know, where your priorities should be when it comes to everything that you can focus on? Because there's a lot of things that are involved with, you know, pursuing any creative career.
Sure. So first thing I'm going to start off with is, I love the saying, like, personally, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. You have one life. People spend majority of it working. And so if you're going to work for the rest of your life, might as well do something that you can either grow, that there is no ceiling cap, that, you know, for me, going to back, you know, a couple of years when I was going to college, and I realized like, okay, I'm learning all these things. I'm pretty techie. Like I that's why I got into IT, or why I picked it. It was like, okay, I like the idea of technology is always going to be growing. I'll be good in a job. I'll be making good money. But I looked at the life that I was living. That's what truly changes. Like, okay, this type of life. So based on, research and also talking to people that are in the industry, okay, it seems like you're doing 2 years. Even if you put your best foot forward, you're working for someone else, and then you'll climb up the ladder, and then even then you're still boom, right? You're still reporting to someone. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying you should get into entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, and I can dive into what the differences are. But like, if you want to start your own business so you can be your own boss, your clients are always going to be your boss. The question is, do you want to be in the driver's seat? Do you want to be in control? Do you want to take on the responsibility? If you are, you have all the upside, all the rewards, all the accolades, but you also take on all the risk. And so some people are willing to do that, other people aren't.
Yeah, I suppose with work-life balance, pretty much everything that you do on a daily basis is a contribution to the work that you're doing. And it's like you said, you're integrating your work into your life and you're not supposed to be separating these things out. So, how do you find purpose in all of the things that you're doing on a daily basis, knowing that it's a contribution towards the life that you want to live and not just your career? Because when you view all of that as one continuous journey and goal instead of just, I have my vacations and I have my work days, then it makes you more intentional around the small things or having a greater purpose or outlook on things.
I guess the one thing that comes to mind is like, we all live in bubbles, right? Like, I come from a family background that everyone works for the most part 9 to 5. No one started their own business. No one, I would say, runs a successful business or has started one. Everyone went to school. My grandparents came from a different country, came into America. It was that American dream. Parents lived that American dream. They, got the job, went to school, got the job. Hey, son, go do the same thing, because that's all they know. Is that their fault? No. But that just showed me, okay, they live in a bubble. I live in a bubble. If I continue, honestly, I thank God that I was born in the time that I live in, like this time, because information is more accessible than ever. Different concepts, meeting different people, connecting with different people is now literally at the snap of a finger or in the palm of your hand. So being able to live through that, and then also realize like, oh, I don't need to do this path. There's other outlets. Yes. Are the odds against you when it comes to like, well, this is your bubble, this is what you're taught? You then have to realize, well, as soon as I pop that bubble, my habits or my beliefs, they don't necessarily disappear, or I just remove them. They have to get replaced with something else. So the biggest thing I learned about habits or just philosophies in general, it's like, if you don't believe one thing, it gets replaced by something else. So you have to realize like that space just never remains empty or vacant. It gets replaced. So it's up to you or deciding what do you want to replace it with. So the idea of like work-life balance, then there's work-life integration. Okay, so now that I believe in this philosophy, I'm no longer going to look at hours on the clock as transactional. Okay, this was dedicated towards work. This was dedicated towards life. Let me look at my monthly balance sheet of life and work, and I'm saying, oh, I spent more time working this month than I did living my life. So next month, you no longer track those things. It's the same way with the whole concept of like serving. I think a lot of people, just to sort of tie it to the creators here, is like, they're very transactional. Hey, I did this for you, so you can do this for me. And I'm waiting for you to do this for me. Well, what if I told you didn't track any of that, and all you did was just operate in one direction, which is serving? And then it just so happens that so-and-so serves, if not tenfold for you, right? And it's like, the less you track those things, the less stress you'll have in your life, in my opinion, right? Because now I'm not stressed about, well, I was working more than I was living life. Like, I look at, wow, I got to go out to Mexico and be part of a unique experience. And all I had to do was provide my value of camera documentation. And this truly changed my life. Like, I didn't get paid for it, but I also didn't lose money. If anything, like, it paid back tenfold because I was able to make so much more money because I became more self-aware. So it's like these things that people are tracking or measuring, it all starts with the philosophy. It all starts with the internal. The sooner you can start like working on those things, and not necessarily saying like what you currently believe is wrong, but question them. Ask them, are they your beliefs, or were they instilled in you because of the bubble that you were brought up in? And so pop the bubble. You're still going to be a part of a bubble, but form your own bubble is my overall takeaway.
I love that. Shifting gears a little bit, tell us a little bit about Evolve Frame. when you started it, why you started it, and the evolution of building a team and scaling to where you are now, and the dynamic of focusing on just health and wellness. Because I think when a lot of people start out in video and photo, it's you're a jack of all trades. You're doing all sorts of different things. And I'm a big advocate for that. So you can figure out what you like working on, what you don't like. And even if you don't like working on something, it was valuable because now it was a part of the process of refining what you want to be doing. But at a certain point, you have to move beyond being a jack of all trades and start specializing. And I mean, I'd be curious to get your perspective on this because I'm sure that's what you're doing. It is what you're doing with Evolve Frame is you have a specialized offer. So talk about what led you from, doing a bunch of different video and photo projects to what you're doing now, which is specialized with Evolve Frame.
Yeah. So it's definitely burnout, right? Burnout is a form of feedback. That's all it is. And so I believe burnout is required in order to define or gain clarity on what you like. I'm a big believer in doing everything at first. That's exactly how I started. Any opportunity that I would get or that came to me or that I was interested in, my goal was to gain clarity, right? Going back to self-awareness. I want to gain clarity on what I want to specialize in. I don't want to pick one too early because then it's like committing to, and then, if I commit to it, then I'm afraid that I'm going to waste my time. And then I've wasted a year, 2 years doing this one thing that doesn't align. Guess what? You're going to have to do it anyway, because that's exactly what happened with me with weddings. I realized like, oh, weddings, I can, make it in this market and look at how much people spend in weddings. I just got to a point where I asked myself after 2 years of doing it, I said, do I want to do this for the next 5 to 10 years? The answer was no. And there was a lot of reasons why. Personally, naturally, I'm more logical than emotional. And so I feel like in the wedding industry, it's a very emotional day. It's an emotional clientele. It's B2C. So it's a whole different language. I like the idea of being more logical, B2B. Business to business conversations. Hey, this is what we're going to do for you. These are the expectations of what we're going to do for you. Take it or leave it. Like that's pretty much it. Versus weddings, and I've had instances, and people that are in the weddings would appreciate this, is where like, they're not ready for this wedding film. I send it. Hey, can you change? Or, this, we didn't really like it. Like that broke me, dude. And I remember being in that situation where I'm like, this is it. Like, I can't keep doing this. I can't be at the mercy of other people like interpreting my work. And I think that's where I became more self-aware as a creative. Creatives are naturally, I think, more emotional. And so I worked on more of the logical. I said, what industry can I be in where it's fine if there's feedback? I mean, naturally there's going to be feedback, but we're focused on more strategic results basis rather than some emotional preference. And so that's where, having that burnout of, I had backlogged so much work. I didn't have a team. I didn't have structure. So that burnout taught me the importance of having SOPs, the importance of, you can't just bring anyone in. You have to train them. You have to spend a certain amount of time to build them up, to allow them to make mistakes, because they are going to make mistakes. And it's like, you're not going to make the perfect hire. There's no such thing. There's such things as having really good principles and SOPs that then build that person up. And so that's, burnout, I think, is the number one underestimated thing that creatives should lean into rather than run away from, because it's going to give you clarity on the what you don't want to be doing. And it's going to also, and by the way, I still work in the wedding industry. I just don't run my own wedding business. I like filming. I like the experience. I love, the whole idea of filming. I just love filming in general. I just hated personally, like the interactions with the clients, like having to manage expectations. And you have to do those things when you're running a wedding business. So I'd rather take less of the pie, right? Because again, I don't need the whole pie to myself. I'd rather take a small slice and be done. And that takes self-awareness. It takes me being able to address the ego. Do I want to run my own wedding business? Or you know what? Hey, I'm here to support you. Here's how I can help you. You gain value from my services. Great. Let's, build this up together and you get all the credit. I don't need any of it. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. And I think burnout is something that a lot of us can relate to. I certainly can. And I think one component of dealing with burnout is delegation and not doing all of the tasks yourself. And that is going to be my next question, which is what has it been like assembling a team and, from a training perspective, but also it's something that I really struggle with is giving up creative control. And, um, you know, it's a big dilemma for me to have to trust someone to carry out for me it's typically editing, and to do all of the necessary tasks in such a way where I'm satisfied with having it be sent, to the client. And it's so difficult for me to let go of that and have that be someone else's responsibility because I know that if I do it, I follow the set of steps that I know are required to get it to be the final product that I want it to be. So I guess that's just a matter of making sure that the people that you're working with are vetted and that you trust them because obviously you have to have trust.
I think trust is earned. I don't.
Yeah.
So I love this quote from Layla Hermosi. She says, "Micromanage until trust is established." So it's accepting that the person that you're going to hire is never going to do a better job than you, and part of just to address, what you're saying, having a hard time giving up that hat or that role. It's respectfully, it's your ego. It's the ego that no one can do a better job than me. I'm the best suited for this. No one's ever going to do that. And although that might be true right now, when you're trying to scale and you have multiple clients coming at you and need multiple deliverables, guess what? Burnout's going to come knocking at your door. And because you experienced it before, you need to do something different. And so what I just decided to do is I started to realize, okay, rather than look for a quick fix solution, I think this is the reality. And to answer your question about training, it's understanding that this person's not going to be my quality today, but they will eventually. And at some point, they're going to be better than me. My goal, my focus is accepting that, addressing the ego, saying, hey, I know I'm better than this person, but they're going to be better than me someday. So I need to work on giving them the insight. Obviously, they don't have the years of experience. My goal is to condense my years of experience down to a crash course so they can succeed within whatever you outline for them. I love 30, 60, 90-day plans where that's a very corporate thing where, okay, the first 30 days, we're going to work on this. Then 60 days, work on this. And by the 90 days, this is the type of outcome we should have. So that's sort of how I implemented the whole training aspect is, okay, this is the final product that we want. I'm going to do it first, but I'm going to make sure to show my process on how I do it and at the standard that I want it at. Now, I just have to take this roadmap and the person that I'm putting in the seat, you have to follow this. And I just have to hold their hand through the process. And then over time, I can let them do it on their own. And that's exactly where we're at right now, where, we've invested in this individual for the past, I would say he's going on 8-9 months now. And we just hired him to our interim senior video editor, where he's now overseeing editors under him because we held his hand through the process. We had high standards. We didn't compromise ever. That's the one thing I want to make very clear. I'm a very high standard person. Hey, this doesn't see the light of day if I don't think it's good. But it's understanding it's going to take time, understanding that this is going to pay dividends. It's the same way with investing in stocks, if you're into that. You're putting in the money now for the future. You're not putting it in so you can make that quick return and be hey, look, I made $1,000 tomorrow. I'm putting it in today. I'm going to let it simmer over time. The market's going to do its thing. I'm going to have ups and I'm going to have downs. But a year from now or whatever your plan is, it should be higher than it was when I recently invested in it. So that's what I would say is the best thing to do is, again, work on the internal, address why do you believe that you're the best? I've also really adopted, again, be the student mindset. If I've accepted that even though I do a really good job, I'm not the best at it. And I'm also not trying to be the best at it. What I want my legacy personally, and this is again, addressing ego, is I get more fulfillment building someone else up and them being able to take the credit. And then they just so happen to give me credit for helping them. That does more for me than me being the person that, well, I did everything. Because I think a lot of creatives want to be they think this, I was caught in this trap. I did everything. I built everything. I did all this. As soon as I let go of that and I said, we built all this, look at where we're at. I always try to maintain the student mindset of, I always have things to learn. I don't know it all. So that way I never put a cap on someone else's performance saying, hey, like it has to be done my way. My goal is to show them how I do it, and then for them to learn and ultimately like teach me, hey, by the way, like this way worked, but I unlocked by going through your way, I unlocked this new way that actually works better. So it's like being humble enough to, regardless of how long you've been in the industry, regardless, even to this day, I'm like telling people, hey, you need a PA, hit me up. Because I feel like I still have yet to learn so much from different people, from different walks of life, from different background. And so always having that student mindset, regardless of the success, regardless of your title, regardless of what you achieve, you'd be surprised how much you can learn and how much you appreciate such like the little things, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you that it is all based on ego. When you say doing things better or having an editor do something better, I don't know if I'm necessarily better than them. It's really just them doing it to the expectations that I and my client have, which is my responsibility to train them in that way. I don't think, skill obviously and years of experience plays a factor into it.
I think well, I'm not saying for you. I'm saying for me, it definitely did.
Yeah.
Like if certain things weren't done my way, I would get upset or I'd be like, no, the quality of the product isn't good.
Sure.
Because it wasn't done my way. So I just want to make sure I'm addressing like not only to you, but someone else out there that's like, doesn't have to necessarily be your way because your way won't be the best. I think at first it has to be, right?
Yeah.
You can quality check, quality control.
Yeah. I acknowledge the ego side of it, and I have an ego that I'm constantly fighting. It's just everyone has their own unique methods of doing things. And like for me, I tend to be a perfectionist for better or worse, but I have a very high standard before anything gets sent to people that, there can't be any typos in the captions. And that's one of my biggest fears is just because, this is my responsibility is editing this. And if it's not done in a way that is just really thorough, then I feel like it defeats the whole purpose of doing it. And it's like you said, doing the little things right is part of what sets you apart, sort of to tie it back before. But yeah, I totally agree. And I love your perspective on that.
I want to stay on this point, like, cause I want to really help if I can. Solve this for you, right? One question I would ask is like, okay, so what are you currently doing that's driving you insane? I'm making an assumption here. You're probably reviewing it yourself. You're sitting there, you're reviewing the captions or, you have a process for the captions being correct. At least for me, with today's technology, I'm like, what if you built out, because these things exist, it's all about figuring it out. What if you built an automation where, so like in our process, I'll just share with you our process.
Yeah.
When we have an editor work on a project, it goes through internal review before it ever sees the light of day for a client. So we have quality control individuals that look at the project before it moves on to client approval, before the client sees it. So we make sure to have a quality control standard operating procedure, SOP, so that way we make sure that captions are addressed. Whether that means, like, I like to export off of, so what I like to do, I go to Premiere, I have it transcribed, I have it, I export the TXT file, I take that TXT file, I run it through ChatGPT, I make sure, hey, is everything spelled correctly, whatever. Like, you can do a quick little reference check. That could be like the first round, right, of internal. And then once you do that, you bring it right back, you paste it into Premiere, or you can, again, teach your editor how to do this. So it's like, what are the steps that are documented to ensure that there's 0% chance that this can go wrong? And you're going to learn through that process. There might be little leaks, but then you can make sure to address those leaks as you go through the process. I think a lot of people just think, well, if they're reviewing the captions and they just miss it and they misspell it, then they're not a good editor, or they're not meeting my expectations. Well, again, what if you can address that by taking that problem away from them so they don't even have to address it? So it's like people just look to solve the entirety of it. Well, what if there's multiple problems and you can solve each one differently? And then that way, this one individual who you're hiring or who's working on the edit can just solely focus on, let's say, the creative storytelling aspect of it, not necessarily something like mundane as captions.
Yeah. I agree with you. And for the most part, captions are from the capabilities that the transcription in Premiere, for example, it can do that almost 95% accurately. It just might misinterpret some words, and that's going to happen. It's not going to have 100% success rate. I just mean there's a bunch of little things like having certain words, grouping words together so they're on screen at once, or there's certain extremely subjective preferences that like I might have, from an editing perspective, that someone else might be fine with certain words not being grouped together on screen at once in one caption and being separated. So there's things like that, but also, I mean, this is the whole back and forth of doing things manually versus relying on automation, because I think automation can get you extremely close, but there's going to be that supervision or the manual inspection aspect. And from what you're saying, having a dedicated quality control individual who is responsible for that.
Which they have a quality control list, by the way.
Yes.
So the whole thing that you're talking about, the subjective part, I would ask, well, how can you put that subjective overview that's in your brain? How can you put it on a piece of paper so a quality control, whether that's you, can go through the list of, okay, like ours is like 0 dead space, words are spelled correctly. We call it pixel peaking, where some fonts or some graphics, like the pixels are pixelated, so it's not like as sharp on the export. So it's like, okay, is the quality control person going through all the checklist, so that way we can ensure at least they're not missing those things. So that's where I would at least say, putting it, you have to figure out a way to communicate, like make that an actionable step, make it a checklist that someone can check off. This whole idea of subject, like everything's pattern recognition. That's the biggest thing I've learned.
Yeah.
From storytelling, it's all pattern recognition, right? You have your exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. It's like, that's a pattern. By the way, that exact same pattern is in music. I don't know the exacts of the music, but it's like the introduction, then you have your verse, chorus, goes to another verse, and the verse sounds a little bit different, and then the chorus, right? And then you have your outro or your end of the song. It's like all the same recognition steps. Throw a little graphic. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But like if you had the graphic in front of you, you'd see exactly what I mean. It's all about recognition, those patterns. So we just have to be self-aware, find out, like, and work towards, okay, how can I communicate this effectively? How do I make something subjective into something objective that's actually obtainable?
That's so helpful when you put it that way. So really what we're talking about is systems. And I know we spoke on the phone a while ago about this, where you're strategically, you're working smarter, not harder in a lot of areas when it comes to booking calls with potential prospects. You have, I think is it Zapier, or there's a, there's softwares like that where
So we use make.com.
Okay, yeah, but just as an example, that when someone signs up, you don't have to manually add their email to your email list. It does it for you. And that's just one example of systematizing things in your process, whether that's making that checklist for quality control or making it seamless so that calls just appear on your calendar instead of you having to manually put in times. And obviously, these tools are very accessible. It's just a matter of recognizing the need to do things more efficiently and putting them in place. So can you talk about, just more generally speaking, about that whole idea of systematizing things to be most efficient? And when you're saving that time, people talk about the 80-20 rule, right? Like the 20% that you're working on is responsible for 80% of the output. So if you're going to be putting systems in place that allow you to focus on that 20% that is really responsible for the rest of the output, that most valuable time, like, why is that so important to put in those systems to be most efficient so that you can focus on those things? And what are those things that you focus on in the business that are responsible for the most growth?
I'm going to give you the most unattractive answer ever. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm lazy. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm genuinely lazy. And I mean that, take that with a grain of salt. Like I like to work out. I like to do all these things. I'm lazy on doing the things that I don't want to be doing. So if you're telling me the same way people like a quick fix to things, if I just spend, let's say, the first 10 hours building out a system or understanding a system, so I never have to worry about scheduling, booking calls or follow-up emails, things that I genuinely just don't like doing. Would I rather be spending 10 hours recurring, doing the same thing over and over again, by definition, and expecting a different outcome, insanity, right? Like that leads to insanity. Or spend the first 10 hours learning how to build it, so that way I only have to do it once, and then I can use that time doing what I actually want to do. So when I say I'm lazy, like I'm lazy to do those things. I don't want to be doing those things. I don't find fulfillment or joy in doing those things. And there's that goes for everything in life, right? When, having discipline, we could talk about all that, but it's like at the end of the day, why not choose that route? Right? Like, I think it's all about perspective. People look at it as being like, well, like either they don't know about softwares that exist, which that's one thing. But then when you know about the software and you're still choosing on a day-to-day to not spend time building out those systems, like I'll be honest, right now, like these past 2 months, we're building like a lot of content backlog because we're looking to launch in March. It's like, this is the time where we do that. So I don't want to be focusing on, all these other things. Like I have to be building, like I have a period of building, but then when it's time to go, I want to just solely be focused on taking calls in March. I don't want to be focused on email follow-ups. I don't want to be focused on, okay, when someone pays the invoice, or like, I'll tell you like an automation that I absolutely love and obsessed with is we use Stripe for our fulfillment because we do a lot of retainer services. So Stripe, personally, I'm all about user-friendly and, the nice look of things. So we use Stripe, whatever, you can look at other payment processors, whatever. We use that because we're able to take the API, which is basically the back end, and use Make, which is the communicator, the translator, I like to say. So it goes from Stripe. Stripe checks if that invoice was fulfilled and the payment was accepted. As soon as that happens, 4 things happen. A Google Drive folder is made for that client. A new project in our Asana project manager tool, a new project's made for that client with that name. What else? Slack channels also created, and a Frame.io account or project is made as well. So all those things are made for me. Now, these are things that some people are doing, and I used to do, where it's like, oh, just sign a new client. Okay, I'm going to spend the first day setting all those things up, rather than getting straight to hopping on a call, getting straight to scheduling and creating content. My goal is to expedite that. So we built out an onboarding sequence. So now when our clients sign up, they get an onboarding email. They have a video that they get to watch that teaches them how to use our systems, how to interact with them, do's and don'ts, right? These are all things that we're all capable of doing. It's just a matter of if we want to do them. So imagine having new clients, like you got to, again, it all starts with faith. You have the faith that you're going to have all these clients that you want. For us, we're not trying to work with so many people. We're trying to work with just a select few. So for me, my main focus is the experience. How can I elevate the experience? So I always think about, okay, well, if I have to hop on a call, but let's say I'm throwing scenarios out there, I can't make this call. So now this whole process gets delayed when I can like just create an email or pre-recorded videos to address these things and the experience gets elevated. Why would I not do that? So, I became obsessed with systems and operations. And I think once you start to discover how it unlocks time for you to do other things, you have to be careful because then you over systemize everything, right? So there's you find out about systems, have fun, like find out how much you can systemize, but then you also have to recognize you can't systemize people. And what I mean by that is when it comes to that 30, 60, 90 plan that I'm applying, it's okay. People need to check in. They need to see your face. They need to talk to you. They have personal things that are going on that a system can't calculate or consider. So how can you have the system do majority of the weightlifting, but you just come in for the emotional support or when they really need you? So that's, I guess my full overview of systems. It helps with a lot. It helps for the future. Your future self will thank you. It's the same, again, work-life integration. Let me tie it back to fitness. Putting in that work now, not eating that food now. Your future self in the summer when the girls see you and they see that body that you have, they, that version of you is going to be thanking you now. That's, it's winter, it's cold, you don't want to go out, but you still get the workout in, you still eat right, and you're disciplined.
Obviously, for Evolve Frame, it's health and wellness professionals, but anyone, I think content is not really like it's a non-negotiable nowadays to just have some sort of digital presence, and video content is one of the most effective ways to communicate your message, and whether it's showcasing testimonials or breaking down and explaining what your offer is. So can you talk about the ways that this medium of video content, why it's so effective, and if people are hesitant to start incorporating that into their, whether it's their social media accounts or a YouTube channel or something like that, to just having it be an essential part of their digital presence and their offer. If someone's hesitant about that, like what would you say to those people, and why would you say that it's video is something worth investing in?
Yeah. I'm trying to be philosophical and give like a one-worded answer, but I guess the best way I could describe it is energy isn't destroyed, it's only converted. What I mean by this is that if we look at TV ratings, if we look at cable, if we look at traditional media and traditional ways of advertising or marketing, why are all the traditional routes at an all-time low, and why is social media at an all-time high? If you don't believe me, look at the numbers. So it's not, I love this quote by the Biz Doc. I don't know if you're a fan of Valuetainment, but Thomas Hemsworth, I think, or I might have been messing up his last name, but he has this quote that he says, words talk, numbers scream. So everything that I'm going to say right now is all words. But if you look at the numbers on where attention is, and going back to how energy is converted, not destroyed, there is a decrease in traditional media and decrease in where people are getting their information or news from, and they're looking for people to trust, right? So where are they going to go if energy is then converted? So you're losing traditional media views, you're losing all that attention. That attention needs to go somewhere else. And guess where it's going? A platform for independent creators or people that like podcast. This is why podcasting blew up, because, hey, we don't trust traditional media anymore. We want to trust independent voices. Joe Rogan, whatever podcast you watch, they like the idea that these people are not bought behind someone else. Now, take everything with a grain of salt, because some people, are bought out by, people are learning the game. They're realizing, oh, wow, people are trusting this person. Let me invest into them, and then we can control sort of what's set. So I'm big, I guess I sound very conspiracy theory, but when you look at on the grand scale of things, and you realize that you become aware of a product or a service based off of awareness. And so where's that awareness? Where's that attention? So if it's all on social media, why would you spend money on traditional advertising on TV, let's say, or even like mailers? Like I still see, at my apartment, I get mailers for this stuff, and I'm just like, all right, in the trash, right? That whatever that piece of paper cost you, you lost it. That tangible piece, done. You can't repurpose that. That goes basura, right? Like you can't reuse that. A piece of video, a piece of photo, you can repurpose in so many different ways. And so again, it's all about what game are you playing? Are you playing the short term or the long term? Media, regardless of what game you're playing, is valuable in both aspects. Whether you're doing a VSL, a video sales letter, right, to bring your client from this point to this point to sell them, to convert them, boom. That's a quick interaction. But then if you're posting content consistently online, building a personal brand or building any form of brand outside of personal, people want to learn more about you. How are they going to learn about you? They want low effort content that they can just click. All right, I can research. No one's going to know I'm watching them. I'm just slowly going to consume their content, be educated. And again, it goes back to tie things full circle about seeking. You talked about seeking truth, right? Well, I've been told, and this is why I love what I do. Health is such a booming thing nowadays, especially like realizing like, well, we were told certain things about health this way, and then I started doing it and it didn't work for me. I was expecting a different outcome. And so who do I listen to now? So again, people are looking for people to trust. So that's why, like, being in the health and wellness market, there are a lot of independent voices or even private practices that have a unique method for recovery, for performance, for whatever. And it's just a matter of connecting with the right person. And those people are looking for those people to trust. So that's how it's applicable to the health and wellness market. And that's why, out of All Frame, we're here to help those brands when it comes to the content creation side of things. But for anyone, regardless of your industry, if you don't exist online, you don't exist, period. So.
Got it. Yeah. It's all about building and establishing that trust and presenting yourself as an authority figure in your space. Because I always say that you're not really selling video, you're selling so much more than that. The results, and it's a vehicle to positioning yourself as the go-to person in your industry. And that's what the content does. And the more that potential customers can spend time with you and learn from you, the more that they trust you and the more likely that they are to work with you. And I think that is such a pivotal part of the sales process. I mean, so many aspects of life come back to trust. One example is a lot of my clients are referred to me by other people in the network that I'm in. And it's amazing if I'm talking to someone for the first time, but they were referred to me by someone that they know, there's automatically that trust there, because if this connection is the result of another mutual connection, then if they trust that person who made the referral, then there's already a level of trust that they have in me. And, that's the case with referrals. But when it comes to cold outreach, you have to build up that trust, and media, the social content strategies, or whatever you're doing in terms of personal brand, that's the direction that you're going, is building that trust. When it comes to organic versus paid, cold outreach, all the different ways, like you said, a mailer is just a temporary thing where if it's discarded, it's gone. Whereas you can repurpose media in a lot of different ways. And you can have it just live on your profile, which you'd consider organic. You can run it as a paid ad. You can cold message people. What are your thoughts in general on all the different ways that you can repurpose media? And from your experience, are some more successful than others, or is it situation dependent, or just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So one thing, just to tie into the last question into this question, is like, well, you need media to do any of that, right?
Yeah.
Advertising, organic, like, you need content. So it all starts with the first step of having content. That's what I believe is the most important part. What you do with that content, that's, the strategy with that content, that's what leads to the results, whether it's more just awareness, whether it's conversion, whether it's nurturing. Like, content serves different purposes. And I think you have to start with, I'll give you a perfect example. The Poli twins, who are our longest clients since we started, they basically started before Volframe was created. This was when I was like a freelancer and I was sort of transitioning out of weddings. We work with them on a one-time project, and we've been working with them ever since on social media content for them. And it all started, like, they came to us wanting to do social media content. And I told them, I said, hey guys, you guys don't have a brand though. Like, respectfully, like, I trust me, I want to do your content, but like, how does it make, like, we need to define some things first. And so the first project we worked on was, let's establish like what your brand is. Okay, so you guys are twin physical therapists. You guys used to work for a big franchise. You then transitioned out. You wanted to start your own business. So what do you guys have? Nothing. They have a professional headshot that has the old logo of the company. That's not going to help them. So they needed fresh photos, fresh content for their website. Then they needed a website developed. And then from there, we created what we call a brand store or business overview video, which is like one video. It talks about who they are, who they're for, and what they do as a solution for a problem that the people that they're trying to talk to have, right? So we did it in a very cinematic storytelling way. 2 years, 3 years, almost 3 years later, we still use B-roll clips from that production because it was shot obviously professionally, but it serves multiple purposes. We use them for vertical, we formatted them properly. So it was like, we knew, right? Because they came to us, this is the big picture, what they want to do, but this is what we're currently working on. That's a perfect example of how we repurpose that content when they, when we worked on that first project. And now we'll find also different areas. We never delete footage. We just bank it. And so we see, okay, like where's an opportunity for us to either fill a gap in education or when it comes to a certain style or approach. We have B-roll of treatment, but we're missing B-roll of interactions with clients, for example. So this is where we want to focus this month, or, it's a compound effect, right? It's the same. I always do my fitness analogies. If you're a bodybuilder and you're working on your entire body, there's going to be areas that you can look at in your muscle groups that you're like, you know what? I want to focus on this area. I want to isolate, do a specific workout for that. And so to translate working out with content, it's all about exercising that content muscle. Other people in your market, the competitive market that it is, they all exist online. They're all creating content. So what's your competitive edge? You are your competitive edge, right? You are the person, you're unique. You have a backstory. You have you're already unique. But the difference is they're putting it out. They're creating content. You're not. So who's really ahead? They are. So to answer your question about organic or paid, it really depends on what you're trying to do. But ultimately, the way I like to do it is you're in a market where everyone is giving value up front consistently. So how do you compete with that? So if you do pay, I always, this is my biggest pet peeve. I get outreach by so many people for different types of services. I go to their profile and they have one picture, a profile picture and a picture of them out on a beach or somewhere. And you're trying to sell me services on copywriting and all this other stuff. So it's like, who am I going to trust? That guy or the guy that has a copywriting page that talks about copywriting all the time, who's creating content, giving value? I'm probably going to go with that guy, even if you guys have the exact same offer and the exact same price point. Why? Because I trust what he's been doing. I'm going to look at his track record. That's another thing too. I'm going to look at his track record and I'm instinctively going to go with him. A big thing I like to say to all prospects or people that think about creating content is like, even Google reviews are dead. Like my whole thing, even coffee shops, this is my way of vetting a coffee shop. I check the coffee shop's Instagram. If the coffee shop's Instagram is not active, I don't go, because I'm like, you guys aren't trying to get new customers in, or like you seem like to be a little outdated. I like and this is just what I'm attracted to. I'm into what's current, especially at coffee shops. I like the nice ambiance, nice environment. So I want to know when I walk into that place, prior to walking in, I want to know that they're taking at least their appearance seriously. And if they're not, I'm probably going to stay away from them. So yeah, content is the way for you to, it's your hygiene standard. Same way we take a shower every day. Hopefully you guys are taking a shower at home, but it's just something you have to be doing. It depends on what level you want to do it at. You could be bathing under a dripping sink, or you can have like a nice, beautiful shower, make it the whole experience. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't think it necessarily means that you have to have thousands and thousands of followers. Obviously, it's helpful to build that. But I think if you have a page with a couple hundred followers, but you're consistently posting quality content on it that is providing value to people and is helpful, and it shows that you are invested in that and you know the importance of it, and you believe in putting that out there to benefit potential customers and raise awareness through that content, that says a lot. And there may be people who are like, oh, I have a new account, or I only have 100 followers or whatever, which is me. It's like that really shouldn't be an excuse to not post on it, because it's like you said, it's better to have an account with a couple hundred followers and a bunch of content on it than, like you said, that profile that has maybe 1,000 followers and doesn't have anything on it, just one photo. The first option is going to give you a lot more indication about what this person has to bring to the table, and it's going to be a lot more persuasive if it's an active account.
Sure. So let me share with you a little secret too.
Yeah.
You can buy followers nowadays. Great, buy them. Does that translate to dollars? No. So it's like you want to create the right content for the right people. That's where I talk about like the strategy component is you want to make sure it's talking to a specific audience. As long as you hit that audience, who cares if you have 100, under 1,000 followers? If that audience resonates with it and they buy your product, best quote I got from a mentor, it's not about the chatter, it's about the cheddar. So focus on the cheddar stuff, regardless of the followers, regardless of any of that. It's all vanity. And listen, I have a blue check mark. Why do I have a blue check mark? Because I want to be verified so bad. It's vanity. It looks better. And you know, someone that DMs you or sees a blue check mark versus someone that doesn't, okay, the response rate of them opening it, it might be worth it. Oh, some people aren't willing to dish out $15 a month. Like, it's just finding different ways to optimize. But at the end of the day, just to like scale it back and simplify everything, you have to start, right? And I think content is the number one thing you have to start with. Because if you have an Instagram page, you created it, but you got zero content on there, doesn't really do much for you. You get a blue check mark, but you got zero content on there, doesn't really do much for you. You outreach, you send 1,000 cold DMs or 1,000, you know, messages to your ideal person, but you got zero content on there. It's not really going to help you. So that's where I just go back. Content is king. You know, you'll never regret creating a piece of content.
Absolutely. And the vanity is just a part of it. It is important to a degree, but it shouldn't be used. The lack of vanity shouldn't be used as an excuse to not post content. Oh, I only have this many followers, so it's not going to be effective. It's like,
well, let me ask you a question. How do you plan on getting more followers?
Right.
Like,
you have to start somewhere. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, you're not posting because you don't have enough followers. Well, it's like, what's going to get you to get more followers? It's like, I'm not muscly. I'm not big and strong. So I can't go to the gym. It's like, you sort of got to go to the gym to then get to a point where you can build muscle.
A point that you made that I think is important is, as long as your followers are engaged, that's better than having thousands or even millions of followers with low engagement. The engagement and the dedication from the people that follow you is what's going to, you know, turn into business. And the number that you see, or the blue check mark, while it's not totally irrelevant, it's a piece of the puzzle, and I guess, a smaller piece of the puzzle compared to what you're actually putting on the account. So
for sure,
I love that. Well, let's tie it up right there. If there's anything else that you think would be that you wanted to talk about, or you think would be a good note to end on.
No, man, I love the questions. Again, I'm an open book. I'm willing to talk about anything and everything. If it provides value, that's what I'm here for.
Awesome. Well, that was all the questions I had. And actually, I came up with a lot more questions throughout the conversation, just from, having it happen naturally. But thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time. I know you're very busy, and I learned a lot from this, and I think, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to, like we were talking about, repurpose this content for other things besides just the podcast episode. I think there were a lot of gems and good quotes in there, and things that hopefully my audience, people who listen to this, will learn from. I was inspired a lot from it. So yeah, it's been awesome to have you as a connection. If there's anyone wants to check out you or Evolve Frame, or, hire you for services, where should they go?
Yeah. So for health and wellness brands or health and wellness professionals, you could check out Evolve Frame. That's where we do a done for you content creation service, where we consult you as well as strategize your content as well as fulfill it for you. If you want to personally message me, you can check me out on Instagram @ Brian Cruz. There I post more just like what I'm personally going through, like sharing insights. I started to post on YouTube as well, just sharing like the behind the scenes of running a creative agency, hiring, meetings, trying to share as much sauce as I can when I went from a glorified freelancer to now being more of a business owner. My goal this year with that personal brand side of thing is helping individuals transition from, let's say, a 9-to-5 job, and they want to take on this entrepreneurship or creating their own brand, so to speak. I want to help expedite that 8-year process that I've been doing media for, and give them the right tools that they need. So any questions that you guys might have, by all means, like, I gain value from those questions because it unlocks a part of my brain. And obviously you get value by getting the prescription of, a solution. to your question. So yeah, I just want to thank you, Dylan. Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this podcast, man. Like, honestly, I think you're doing great stuff, especially like getting different conversations going with different people. Don't stop, keep it going. And yeah, just grateful to be here and excited to see your growth in the next year, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it again, and we'll talk soon.